All right. Sarah Wolf joining you here with Hendricks County Parks. We were going to do an in-person in the creek presentation today for a group. So we decided to offer that for everyone online for free. And I'm honestly kind of glad we're not swimming in the creek right now because it's been snowing, at least where I am right here. So we're going to do a little virtual aquatic ecology field trip lessons and activities for you here online. So we're going to be talking about benthic macroinvertebrates. But before we begin that part, can you think of a creek near where you live, and what are some things that indicate that that creek is healthy? Maybe it's not much trash. Maybe you've got clear water. There might be fish or other animals living in the water. And the types of the animals that live in the water can tell you a lot about the health of the creek. Have you done any water testing in a creek near your home or school? That's another way to tell how healthy the creek is. So there's some critters called benthic macroinvertebrates, and they can actually tell us a lot about the health of the creek. These are water-dwelling insects and animals. And let's break down the name here for benthic macroinvertebrates. So macro means you can see them with your eyes. You don't need a microscope. Micro means tiny. Macro is bigger than tiny. Invertebrate means that there's no backbone. Vertebrate means backbone. And then benthic means bottom dwelling. So we have these critters that are bottom dwelling, big enough to see with your eyes, and critters without a backbone. And these can tell us a lot about the health of the creek by if they're there. But why are we so interested about these benthic macroinvertebrates? Because these critters are so small, they can't swim away if there's suddenly some type of pollution that's been spilled in the creek. Fish can usually swim to get away from some types of pollution. Types of benthic macroinvertebrates in the creek can tell us about the long-term health of the creek. Scientists have classified some of these benthic macroinvertebrates based on their ability to tolerate or not to tolerate pollution. What's another way to check the water quality of the creek? Testing the water? Yeah. True, the temperature and the other measurements of the water can tell us if the creek is not polluted, but this gives us a measurement of water at that instant in time. The types of benthic macroinvertebrates can tell us more about the creek than just testing the water. So let's take a look about what these things look like. I think they look like tiny space aliens. On this page, this is an identification key for some of the macroinvertebrates we can find in the creek around here in Indiana. And you notice that they look kind of weird. There's all kinds of different critters here. We've got some crayfish, we've got some snails, some mussels, all kinds of weird things. Something called a rat-tailed maggot, which is my favorite name of one of them. And then they come in these different groups. They're organized into different groups. And scientists have put them into different groups based on how much water pollution they can tolerate. So there's 4 different groups. So group 1 up at the top, it says very intolerant of pollution. So what does that mean? Do you know what the word intolerant means? So someone is lactose intolerant. That means that they can get a stomach ache or worse if they eat milk, right? Well, group 1 insects can't live in polluted water. Group 1 macroinvertebrates have gills. Sometimes it's hard to see their gills on them because they're so small, but they do. So how do animals with gills breathe? Yeah, their gills take in oxygen from the water, just like fish. So anything that's in the water, such as too much soil or mud or chemicals, can clog their gills so they can't breathe and then they die. So one way to look for their gills on these types of animals is to look for something that's like tiny moving feathers. You're not going to be able to see moving things on these pictures here, but you can when you're in the creek. You have to look very, very closely, sometimes with a magnifying glass. Down at the bottom, we have group 4. And this group here is called very tolerant of pollution. So what does the word tolerant mean? Maybe you've heard that word before. So if you have a younger brother or sister, or maybe a dog or cat or a younger neighbor, and you put up with their questions or them hanging out with you or your dog pawing at you, that means you're very tolerant of them. Well, group 4 macroinvertebrates can live in polluted water. And these insects and critters have lungs, which means they breathe air just like us. So they will stick maybe a breathing tube out of the water, like the rat-tailed maggot has a breathing tube in its tail. It's not breathing out of its butt, don't worry. And they will stick their head or breathing tube out of the water and breathe air just like us. So they can tolerate much more polluted water than the others. Oh, let me show you a picture of mosquito larvae. So mosquito larvae also breathe through a tube in their tail. These are baby mosquitoes. So sometimes you might have seen a little bucket of water in your yard with little squiggly things at the top of the puddle. That's the mosquito larvae. They can live in very polluted water almost anywhere. Mosquito larvae are not on our key or our list of critters that we're looking for in the creek. So then group 2 and 3 in the middle there, they are somewhere in the middle between very intolerant of pollution and very tolerant. So they're kind of in the middle. So do you think group 1 macroinvertebrates can live in polluted water? No, they can't. Do you think group 4 macroinvertebrates can live in clean water? Yes, they can. They breathe with lungs. It doesn't matter about the water quality, so they can live in cleaner water. So just because you find a rat-tailed maggot doesn't mean that it's polluted water. So if we find mostly group 1 macroinvertebrates, what can you guess about the health of the creek? Yeah, it's low polluted. It's not polluted very much. If we find mostly group 4 insects, what can you guess about the health of the creek? Probably not so good. Yeah. And what do you think? Do you think we'll find all the critters on this page here? Nope, we're not going to find all of them. And we might even find some that aren't on the sheet. And that's just because scientists haven't classified those other critters by their pollution tolerance. These are maybe more of the easier ones to find in the creek. All right, I emailed and also shared our 4 different streams that we've already sampled. These include pictures of macroinvertebrates, and you're going to use the provided identification keys to classify the water quality of each river. So assume that these streams have been collected or sampled with the sampling methods described in the YouTube video I sent you. These are the macroinvertebrates that we've collected. These are pretty weird critters, aren't they? These are not to scale. They are much smaller in real life. All right, so let's use our identification key here in a minute to identify these critters in stream 1. So we've got some weird looking animals here. So I'm going to pull up the identification key so we can look at these at the same time. Okay, so you might have printed this off and it might be easier to look at it on your table there. But we're going to identify quickly a few animals here in our stream based on what group they're in. So we can easily see that we have a crayfish. So crayfish is in group 2. We have those rat-tailed maggots. They're in group 4. We have some things with feathery looking tails. We have some bugs that look like pill bugs, which you might be able to see over there on your sheet. And then we've got some snails. There are 2 different kinds of snails on our sheets. So let's just quickly look at how to identify those. So when the snail tip is pointing up and the opening of the snail shell is towards you, if it's off to the left or the right, that's going to help you determine what kind of snail it is. They're actually called left and right-handed snails. Even though they don't have hands, they do have one foot. So this snail here in our stream is a left-handed snail because the opening is off to the left. So this is our left-handed snail. This is in group 4. It's very tolerant of pollution. The way I remember which kind of snail is best or not as good is left for lungs, LL, so left for lungs. So this is in group 4 here. All right, well, I've done some of the work for you on the next slide here, so let's take a look. So here are our critters that we have in the different groups. We've got a planaria, we've got sow bugs, we've got some damselfly nymphs, got some crayfish. So let's look at them all organized. Now, it might be helpful for you to print that first page of the macroinvertebrates off and then cut them out so that you can organize them. So mostly we're just looking at the types of animals and not the numbers of animals. So we've got these different animals here. All right, now we're going to look at the biological monitoring data sheet. It sounds pretty fancy and sciencey. To classify the water quality of each river, now this is important, pay attention. You're going to make a check mark in the box next to each organism's name. You do not enter the number of each organism. Only the presence or absence of each organism matters. So we're going to list here the different critters that we had. So we had some damselfly nymphs. We had some sow bugs. And remember, number doesn't matter. We're just going to check off the ones that we have. We have some crayfish, and we have 3 animals in group 2. So we're going to write a 3 down here at the taxa represented, number of taxa represented. Then we're going to have to do some math here, kids. Sorry, I'm tricking you into doing math. We've got weighting factors at the bottom of each of these boxes here. So we're going to take 3 times 3. Can you think of that answer there? Okay, 3 times 3 is 9. So we're going to write 9 in the box. And then we're going to go over and look at the other groups. So we had some planaria. They have kind of a triangular looking head. They're very small, but they're pretty cool. You can kind of even see eye spots on them in the creek. So we have 1 taxa for group 3, and the weighting factor is 2. So 1 times 2 is 2. We can write 2, the answer there, and then we're going to go on to group 4. We have rat-tailed maggots. It doesn't matter how many. We have some left-handed snails. So we have 2 taxa represented in group 4. And we're going to multiply 2 times 1 for the weighting factor. So that's 2. And we're going to put that in there. And then we're going to add each of these blue boxes for a total of 13, which means that this creek, stream number 1, has a fair pollution tolerance index rating. You can see that down here in this gray box. So it's not super good, but it's not terrible. And there are ways that you can do some things to help improve the water quality. You might want to get involved with some stream cleanups. Sometimes these are organized through your local soil and water conservation district. There are other things that can be done to help water quality, and I listed some of those resources to groups to help you think of some ideas of how to improve water quality near you. So maybe you can take this example and then use this to help you find the answers to the other streams that I shared with you. Now, of course, there are other ways of classifying water quality in rivers, and this is just one method, but it's a lot of fun. So let me know if you have any questions about the topic here. You can type those in the chat box, or you can email those to us later, and we'll answer those. We have a few things coming up this summer. fingers crossed. We have some in-person programs in the creek this summer, and you can find those on our website here soon. You might enjoy some in-person programs. We might also have some other online programs for you related to creeks. Some of those programs can be found on our website, and we also have our summer program guide published. We do have it online for you to view through our website. We're hoping nothing changes with our programs, of course. If you do happen to go out to McLeod Nature Park, the trails are open there, you can pick up one of these in person at the front of the Nature Center in the brochure rack. So McLeod Nature Park and the Vandalia Trail are open for solitary enjoyment. Plan ahead because the restrooms in the Nature Center are closed until further notice, and other updates and announcements can be found at our website, and this will be updated once our webmaster is able to. The internet was giving problems. So I hope you enjoyed learning a little bit about benthic macroinvertebrates today. And if you have questions, we can answer those.